The conference room door locked with a soft click before the meeting even started. I noticed it but didn't think much of it then. Colin stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed, that rehearsed look of disappointment already fixed on his face. I was mid-sentence, explaining the Brightspan timeline, when he cut me off. "Kelsey, we need to talk about how you nearly blew the $13.2 million renewal." His voice was calm, surgical. Everyone went silent. My throat tightened. Nearly blew it. "Colin, the proposal went out on schedule. Brightspan confirmed receipt yesterday." He shook his head slowly, like I was a child who didn't understand. "That's not the point. Your emotional instability is affecting the entire team. You're not leadership material, and frankly, I'm removing you from the account effective immediately." The room felt airless. My hands trembled under the table. I looked around. Two colleagues who usually had my back wouldn't meet my eyes. They knew. They'd known this was coming. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping loud against the floor. "You can have the account, Colin. I'm done." I walked out. Behind me, silence. Then whispers. The door clicked open as I left, and I realized it had been locked the whole time. For weeks earlier, everything had been fine. I'd managed the Brightspan account for 3 years. They trusted me. Then Colin arrived as the new VP, all charm and handshakes with the executives. But when he looked at me, something changed. His smile went flat. The first sign came in an email thread. Brightspan's CEO had asked a question about next quarter's deliverables. I started typing a response, then noticed Colin had already replied, leaving me off the chain entirely. When I asked him about it later, he shrugged. Must have been an accident. But it wasn't. A week later, I found a calendar invite buried in my spam folder. A strategy call with Brightspan, scheduled for that afternoon. Colin had named himself the lead. My name wasn't listed anywhere. Called him immediately. "Oh, didn't you get the memo? I'm taking a more active role in key accounts." His tone was casual, dismissive. That afternoon, Tyler, a junior analyst, caught me in the hallway. He glanced over his shoulder before speaking. "Kelsey, be careful. He's trying to replace you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Tyler just shook his head and walked away quickly. I tried addressing it directly. I scheduled a one-on-one with Colin, kept my tone professional, laid out my concerns clearly. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You're being paranoid, Kelsey. I'm just trying to support you." But his eyes said something different. After that meeting, things got worse. Project files I'd created started disappearing from shared folders. My support team was quietly reassigned to other accounts without explanation. When I asked HR, they told me it was part of a departmental realignment. Nobody would give me details. Then Brightspan's CEO, Mr. Dawson, called me directly on my cell. "Kelsey, I need to ask you something. Why is Colin suddenly joining every call with us? We didn't request his involvement." Felt my pulse quicken. "I wasn't aware he was doing that, sir. I apologize if there's been confusion." Mr. Dawson's voice softened. "There's no confusion on our end. We trusted you, not him. Just wanted you to know that." The call ended and I sat staring at my phone. Brightspan still wanted me. They just didn't want Colin. That changed everything. Colin called me into his office on a Wednesday morning. He dropped a stack of papers on the desk. "I need this analysis finished by Friday. Full competitive landscape, risk assessment, projected ROI for the next 5 years. I blinked. "Colin, that's a 2-week project minimum. I don't even have access to half the data I'd need." He smiled coldly. "Then you'd better work fast." Friday came. I'd barely slept, pulling together what I could with incomplete information. When I submitted the draft, Colin tore it apart in front of the entire team. "This is unacceptable. Floppy. Unprofessional. I expected better from someone at your level." My face burned. I wanted to scream that he'd withheld the data I needed, but I stayed silent. Later that afternoon, one of the data analysts, a woman named Freya, caught me in the break room. She looked nervous. "Kelsey, I shouldn't be showing you this, but you need to see it." She handed me her tablet. On the screen were emails, dozens of them, containing the exact market data I'd requested. All sent to Colin. None forwarded to me. He'd deleted my access intentionally. I took screenshots of everything. From that moment, I started documenting every interaction, every missing file, every sabotaged deadline. I wasn't going down without evidence. Brightspan invited me to an off-site strategy session at a hotel downtown. Colin wasn't included on the invite, and I didn't mention it to him. The session went well. We discussed expansion plans, quarterly goals, and long-term partnership structures. Afterward, a sharp woman named Patricia pulled me aside in the lobby. "Kelsey, I'm going to be direct with you. If you ever leave that company, call us first. We'd follow you anywhere." I was stunned. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Patricia, but I'm not planning on leaving." She smiled knowingly. "Plans change. Just remember what I said." I didn't tell anyone about that conversation. What I also didn't tell anyone was that Brightspan's original contract renewal, the one signed 3 years ago, specifically listed me as their required account lead. It was buried in the fine print, but it was there. Colin didn't know that. He thought the contract belonged to the company. But legally, Brightspan had the right to refuse service if I wasn't their primary contact. That clause had seemed like a formality when it was written. Now it felt like a lifeline. I went home that night and read the contract again, line by line, making sure I understood every word. The following Monday, Colin held a surprise realignment meeting. He projected a new org chart on the screen. My name was buried 2 layers down under people I used to supervise. The Brightspan account was listed entirely under his name. "This structure reflects our current priorities," Colin announced. "Some people just aren't cut out for leadership roles." He looked directly at me when he said it. I said nothing. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably. A few looked at me with pity. Others avoided my eyes entirely. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk in a daze. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. An hour later, I got an email from HR. Subject line: "Meeting request, attitude and collaboration discussion." My stomach sank. This was it. Colin was building a case to push me out. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at 10. I had 2 days to prepare. I called my lawyer that night. She listened carefully, took notes, and told me to bring every piece of documentation I had. "If they're setting you up, we need to be ready," she said. I agreed. I wasn't going to let Colin destroy my career without a fight. The HR meeting was a trap. I knew it the moment I walked in and saw Brenda from HR sitting with a script in front of her. She smiled politely, but her eyes were cold. "Kelsey, we've received some concerns about your ability to collaborate effectively with leadership." I stayed calm. "What specific concerns?" Brenda glanced at her notes. I leaned forward slightly and saw Colin's talking points highlighted in yellow. "There have been reports that you're resistant to feedback, dismissive of new leadership structures, and unwilling to adapt." Every word was rehearsed. Pulled out my folder. I have documentation showing that files were deleted from my access, deadlines were set without providing necessary resources, and client communications were rerouted without my knowledge. "Would you like to review them?" Brenda's smile faltered. "That's not what this meeting is about." But it was. It was about making me look difficult so Colin could justify removing me. I left the meeting knowing I couldn't win this fight internally. The system was rigged. Colin had HR on his side. I needed to think bigger. That night I started making calls. I met with Victor, my old mentor, at a coffee shop across town. He'd left corporate life 5 years ago and now ran a boutique consulting firm. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back and sighed. "Kelsey, you're too good for that place. You always have been." I shook my head. "I just want to do my job without being sabotaged." Victor smiled. "Then stop working for someone who's sabotaging you." If you ever want to break out on your own, I'll help you set up everything. No cost. You've got the skills. You've got the reputation. All you need is the courage. I thanked him but didn't commit to anything. Walking back to my car, my phone buzzed. An email from Brightspan. Subject line: private meeting request without Colin. My heart raced. Opened it. Mr. Dawson wanted to meet me for lunch tomorrow. Just the two of us. No company representatives. I sat in my car for a long time staring at that email. Everything was shifting. The ground beneath me was moving, and I had to decide whether to fall or jump. Mr. Dawson met me at a quiet restaurant near the waterfront. We made small talk at first, but I could tell he had something important to say. Finally, he set down his fork and looked at me directly. Kelsey, I'm going to be honest. We're hesitating to renew because Colin's presence changes the entire tone of the partnership. Every time he's on a call, he talks over you, dismisses our concerns, and treats us like we don't understand our own business. I nodded slowly. I've noticed that too. Mr. Dawson leaned forward. The contract renewal is worth $13.2 million annually. We'll only sign it if you lead the account. Not Colin. You. I felt my breath catch. Mr. Dawson, I appreciate your confidence, but I'm not in a position to guarantee that right now. He studied me carefully. Are you planning to stay there much longer? The question hung in the air. I didn't answer immediately. Finally I said, I'm exploring my options. He nodded. Good. Because if you leave, we want to work with you directly. Not your company. You. We finished lunch, and I left feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. The next morning, Colin barged into my office without knocking. He slammed a file on my desk hard enough to make my coffee cup rattle. What the hell is this? I looked at the file. It was a client satisfaction survey. Brightspan had given me perfect scores. Colin's name wasn't mentioned once. You're weakening team morale, he snapped. You're undermining my authority, and I'm putting you on performance watch effective immediately. I stood up slowly. Performance watch. For getting perfect client scores. Colin's face reddened. Leadership has already approved it. You're one mistake away from being terminated. I knew he was lying. If leadership had approved it, HR would have contacted me first. This was Colin acting alone, trying to intimidate me into submission. I met his eyes. Is there anything else? He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I sat down, my hands trembling with anger. I wasn't going to let him push me into a corner anymore. It was time to act. I started preparing quietly. I met with my lawyer again, asking detailed questions about what constituted ethical client movement. She explained that if a client chose to follow me based on their own preference, and if no proprietary company information was used, it was legal. Took notes. I cleaned all personal files off my work computer, transferring everything to a personal hard drive. I gathered every piece of documentation showing Colin's sabotage, the deleted emails, the reassigned teams, the locked meeting, all of it. I organized it into a timeline with evidence for each incident. Then I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Colin had been rewriting project histories in the company's internal logs. Accounts I'd managed for years now showed him as the primary lead. He was systematically erasing my contributions from the record. On Thursday afternoon, Tyler found me in the parking lot. He looked terrified. Kelsey, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Colin's planning something big for tomorrow's meeting. He's going to ambush you in front of everyone. Thanked him. I already knew what was coming. I'd been preparing for it all week. Friday's meeting was exactly what Tyler had warned me about. Colin stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, that same rehearsed look of disappointment on his face. The door locked before the meeting started. I noticed it this time. Colin cut me off mid-sentence, accused me of nearly blowing the Brightspan renewal, and told everyone he was removing me from the account. He called me emotionally unstable. He said I wasn't leadership material. The room went silent. I felt every eye on me. But this time I was ready. I stood up slowly, my voice steady. "You can have the account, Colin. I quit." The room erupted in whispers. Colin looked stunned. He'd expected me to fight, to beg, to break down. Instead, I picked up my folder and walked toward the door. As I passed Tyler, he slid something into my hand. Flash drive. I closed my fingers around it without looking at it. Behind me, Colin was already talking, spinning the narrative, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. I walked out of that building carrying only a small box of personal items and the flash drive Tyler had given me. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. 3 missed calls from Brightspan. I sat in my car and listened to the voicemails. Mr. Dawson, Patricia, even their head of operations. All asking the same question. "What happened? Are you okay?" I called Mr. Dawson back first. "Kelsey, we just heard you left the company. Is that true?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, sir. As of today, I'm no longer employed there." There was a pause. Then Mr. Dawson said, "Good. We were about to cancel the renewal anyway." Colin made that decision easy. I drove home in a daze. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from former colleagues, some supportive, others just curious. Then I got an email from Colin himself. Subject line: "Return all Brightspan materials immediately." I deleted it without responding. That night, I plugged in Tyler's flash drive. It contained recordings. Audio files from meetings where Colin had openly discussed his plan to push me out, emails he'd sent to HR painting me as difficult, and internal memos where he'd lied about client feedback. Tyler had been documenting everything. I had proof now. Undeniable, damning proof. I backed up the files in 3 different places and finally let myself breathe. The first week after quitting felt surreal. I slept late, took long walks, and tried to process everything that had happened. Victor called me every day, checking in, offering support. On Wednesday, he helped me file the paperwork for a consulting LLC. By Friday, I had a business license and a registered company name. Brightspan reached out again. Patricia emailed asking if I'd be willing to meet at their headquarters. "Just to talk," she said. "No pressure." I agreed. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday. On Monday morning, I got another email from Colin. This one was different. No threats, no demands. Just, "We should talk. Please call me." I didn't respond. I had nothing to say to him. But I did forward the email to my lawyer just in case. That afternoon I went shopping for business clothes. If I was going to meet with Brightspan as an independent consultant, I needed to look the part. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to excitement. I was building something new. Something mine. The meeting at Brightspan's headquarters was different from anything I'd experienced before. I wasn't representing a company. I was representing myself. Mr. Dawson, Patricia, and 3 other executives sat around the table. They got straight to the point. "Kelsey, we rejected every attempt your former company made to force Colin on us. We told them we wanted you or we'd walk." Patricia slid a folder across the table. "We'd like you to submit a proposal. As an independent consultant. If your rates are reasonable, we'll sign a contract with you directly." I opened the folder. Inside was a draft agreement outlining the scope of work, deliverables, and timeline. Everything I'd been managing for 3 years, now structured as a consulting engagement. At the bottom was a number. $13.2 million annually. I looked up at them. "You're offering me the entire contract." Mr. Dawson nodded. "You earned it. We trust you." "We don't trust them." I told them I'd review the agreement and get back to them within 48 hours. Walking out of that building, I felt like I was floating. Everything had changed. Back at my old company, panic was setting in. I heard through former colleagues that the Brightspan renewal had stalled completely. Leadership was finally asking questions. Why had Colin removed me from the account? Why were clients refusing to work with him? Then someone leaked the recording. The audio file from Tyler's flash drive, the one where Colin called me emotionally unstable and said I wasn't leadership material, spread through the company like wildfire. People who'd stayed silent before were suddenly outraged. Colin sent me another message. This time it was desperate. "Kelsey, we need to talk. Please. This has gotten out of hand." I still didn't respond. But I did send a formal letter through my lawyer, stating that I would not be returning any materials because I'd never taken company property, and that all further communication should go through legal channels. That night Victor called. "Kelsey, you're the talk of the industry. People are watching this. Whatever you do next, do it right." I promised him I would. I was already working on the proposal for Brightspan, making sure every detail was perfect. I was working at a cafe downtown when Colin walked in. I didn't see him at first. He slid into the chair across from me without asking. "Kelsey, please. Just hear me out." Closed my laptop. "You have 2 minutes." He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled. "I made mistakes. I see that now. But you need to tell Brightspan to stay with the firm. If they don't renew, I'm finished." I stared at him. "You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. You sabotaged my work. You tried to destroy my career. And now you want me to save yours." Before he could answer, the cafe door opened. Patricia walked in. She saw us, and her expression hardened. "Am I interrupting something?" Colin stood up quickly. "No, I was just leaving." Patricia waited until he was gone, then sat down. "Was he bothering you?" He nodded. She smiled. "Good thing I'm early then. Kelsey, are you ready to sign with us?" I looked at her. "Yes, I am." I met with my lawyer one more time before signing anything. She reviewed the Brightspan contract line by line. "This is clean," she said. "Because the renewal wasn't finalized, Brightspan is free to choose whoever they want. And they're choosing you. Your old company has no legal claim." That was all I needed to hear. I signed the contract that afternoon. Brightspan countersigned within an hour. It was official. I had a $13.2 million annual contract as an independent consultant. My old company found out within hours. Suddenly, my access to all internal systems was revoked. Email, file sharing, even the company directory. They were trying to cut me off completely. But it didn't matter. I didn't need them anymore. That evening I got a call from an unknown number. It was Heather, my former manager. "Kelsey, I shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know. The board is conducting a review of Colin's leadership. That recording made everything worse. He's been suspended pending investigation." I thanked her and hung up. Justice was finally happening, even if I wasn't there to see it. Colin's downfall happened faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, the board completed their review. Multiple people came forward with complaints about his behavior. The deleted emails, the sabotaged projects, the hostile work environment, all of it documented and confirmed. I heard through the grapevine that Colin was let go quietly. No announcement, no explanation. He just stopped showing up. His department was reorganized. His projects redistributed. It was like he'd never existed. Meanwhile, my consulting business was thriving. Brightspan's executives were thrilled with the transition. Our first quarterly review went flawlessly. They even mentioned expanding the contract next year. I was working from a small office I'd rented downtown. Just me and a part-time assistant I'd hired to handle administrative work. It was small, but it was mine. Victor called me one afternoon with an offer. "Kelsey, I've been thinking. How would you feel about becoming a partner in my firm? We could combine resources, take on bigger clients. You'd have full autonomy and a significant salary increase." I told him I'd think about it. The idea was tempting. Brightspan held a formal press announcement for their new consulting partnership. They deliberately phrased it as, "Continuing our partnership with Kelsey Ward." The announcement went out to all their industry contacts. Within days, I started getting emails from other companies. Former clients who'd worked with me at my old firm, colleagues who'd moved to different organizations, even competitors who'd heard about what happened. One message stood out. It was from the CEO of a tech company I'd worked with years ago. "Kelsey, are you accepting new clients?" We'd love to discuss a potential project. I forwarded the email to Victor. Maybe that partnership idea makes sense after all, I wrote. He called me immediately. Let's do this. You bring the clients, I'll bring the infrastructure. We'll build something incredible. We met that week and started drafting partnership agreements. Everything was moving fast, but it felt right. For the first time in years, I was excited about the future. My old company's losses kept mounting. They didn't just lose Brightspan. 2 other smaller clients, companies worth about $2 million annually each, pulled their contracts when they learned what had happened to me. One of them sent me an email. We don't work with organizations that treat their people like that. Investors started asking questions. Why had a $13 million account walked away? Why was employee morale so low? Why was leadership allowing toxic behavior? The board demanded answers. Colin was already gone, but the damage he'd caused was still spreading. Meanwhile, my name was trending internally across multiple companies in the industry. People were calling me the woman who stood up to a bully and won. I didn't think of it that way. I just refused to accept being treated badly. But the narrative stuck. Industry blogs picked up the story. My LinkedIn profile got thousands of views overnight. I was becoming known not just for my work, but for my principles. Colin reached out one last time. He sent an email asking for a neutral conversation. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. He showed up looking exhausted, defeated. Kelsey, I know I messed up. I'm asking you, as a professional courtesy, to tell the board I meant well. That you misinterpreted my intentions. I stared at him. He was still trying to rewrite history. Still trying to avoid accountability. I stood up. Colin, you didn't mean well. You bullied me. You sabotaged my work. You tried to destroy my career because you felt threatened. And now you're facing the consequences. I'm not going to lie for you. He opened his mouth to argue, but I walked away. I didn't owe him anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not my help. I left the coffee shop and didn't look back. I signed the final partnership agreement with Victor on a bright Tuesday morning. We combined our firms, creating something bigger and stronger than either of us could have built alone. Brightspan became the flagship client of our new consultancy. Victor offered me a title, Senior Partner and Director of Client Strategy. The salary was more than double what I'd made at my old company. I also had equity in the firm, real ownership, not just empty promises. That afternoon I got an email from another former contact. A hospital network looking for consulting help on a major system overhaul. The project was worth $4 million over 2 years. I forwarded it to Victor with a note. Looks like we're going to need more office space. He called me laughing. Kelsey, you're a rainmaker. This is just the beginning. Smiled. He was right. This was only the beginning. Colin's termination became official. I found out through a company-wide email that someone forwarded to me. Effective immediately, Colin's department will be reorganized indefinitely. We're committed to fostering a collaborative and respectful work environment. It was corporate speak for we messed up and we're fixing it. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt relieved. Colin was gone. He couldn't hurt anyone else the way he'd hurt me. The culture that had protected him was being dismantled, slowly but surely. Meanwhile, my business kept growing. In 3 months, I'd signed 5 new clients. My revenue projections for the first year were already exceeding my expectations. Victor and I were planning to hire 2 more consultants by the end of the quarter. One evening I got a message from Tyler. Thank you for everything. You showed us what integrity looks like. I wrote back. You showed me what courage looks like. That flash drive changed everything. We never spoke about it again, but I never forgot what he'd done for me. 6 months after walking out of that conference room, I moved into a new office. It was bright, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My name was on the door. Kelsey Ward, Senior Partner. I ran my first payroll for our growing team and realized something stunning. I was now making more in 6 months than I'd made in 5 years at my old company. And I was doing it on my own terms with my own clients, building something I believed in. That afternoon, Mr. Dawson called. Kelsey, our board met yesterday. They want to expand the contract next year. We're looking at potentially doubling it, maybe more. I thanked him, trying to keep my voice steady. After the call ended, I sat at my desk and looked out the window. The city stretched out below me, full of possibility. I thought about Colin, about that locked conference room, about the moment I'd decided I was done. I'd walked away from everything I knew, and in doing so, I'd found something better. This wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning.